Age of Overlord is right around the corner, and with it comes some support for the most recent TCG exclusive archetype, Tistina. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a broad overview of the entire archetype of Tistina, including today, the support from today and the support from the last set, and then I'm going to show you two matches I had with Billy, another member of the team, using the Tistina cards on Dawning Book, so you can see the cards in action. So I'm going to start by talking through the first wave of support before I talk about the new support. So Tistina all are aqua monsters with different levels and different attributes, which is very annoying to play with, who center around this guy, Crystal God Tistina, who is a level 10 light aqua with 2000 attack and 3000 defense. It has the effect that during your main phase, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. This is not a quick effect, it's only during your turn, and it's only during the main phase, so it's quite a weak effect. But if the actual effect goes off, really, really strong. Book of Eclipse, and then send all face-up cards. This deals with floodgates, it deals with link monsters. Really strong effect if you can get it to actually go off. The second effect is if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you do the exact same effect again. You Book of Eclipse and then you send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. Only use each effect of the guy once per turn, and he's kind of the center point of this archetype. The next card we want to talk about is probably Demigod of the Tistina. This kind of looks the exact same. This says if you control a Tistina card, you can special summon this card from your hand, then you can add one Tistina spell or trap from your deck to your hand. During your opponent's turn, if you control Crystal God Tistina, which is the first card we talked about, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down position, and then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. So the exact same effect as the Crystal God. This is a lot better because it is a quick effect. It does require you to control the other one as well to be able to use it, which is very annoying, but I mean, at least this guy can use his effect in your opponent's turn as a form of disruption, and he also can be summoned if you control any Tistina card, so it doesn't have to be a monster, and he also just adds a Tistina spell trap in the same effect where he summons himself, which means his summon can be ashed, but it's not a good archetype, so I mean, you can't really argue about losing to Ash Blossom. So now we'll talk about the main spells that this guy is going to search. So the main spells you'll be searching with this guy is Divine Domain Tistina, which is the field spell, and Breath of the Tistina. We'll start with the field spell. So the field spell says during your main phase, you can send one Tistina monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if your opponent controls 3 or more face-up cards, you can special summon one Crystal God Tistina from your hand or deck. So this is cool, it's a Foolish Burial every single turn, it's not just an activation, and if your opponent happens to control 3 or more face-up cards, just special summon the Crystal God and it's instantly going to challenge your opponent's board and it's going to force interruption, which is really cool. It has more effects, well, another effect. You're going to use this effect once per turn, but this effect, if this card in your field zone is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon one Tistina monster from your deck or graveyard. This means that if you can get this on the board, your opponent doesn't negate its activation before it hits the field spell zone, and you activate this effect. If they let it resolve, you can special summon Crystal God. If they don't let it resolve and then negate it, you get to special summon Crystal God, and you're instantly challenging the board. This is a very strong spell. It's too bad that the monsters around it aren't that great, I guess, but he's pretty okay. We have Breath of the Tistina is the other main search target for Demigod, and this is a continuous spell. During your main phase, you can normal summon one Tistina monster in addition to your normal summon or set. You only get his effect once per turn. Strong effects. Extra normal summon is really good, especially when you have like level 10s that don't drop themselves. You're going to have to tribute summon at some point, and having an extra normal summon is going to help with that. It has another effect where you can target one face-up monster you control, or if you control a light Tistina monster, you can target one face-up monster you're on the field instead, so your opponent's cards. Change that monster to face-down defense position, then add one Tistina card from your deck to your hand. This adds a Tistina card, so it also adds the field spell, adds the traps, which we'll talk about later, and also just adds the monsters, which is really strong. So it's an extra normal summon, it's a searcher every single turn, really, really good. The next card I want to talk about is Sentinel. Sentinel is a level 3 wind aqua with 1200 attack and 1400 defense. And this card says if this card is in your hand or graveyard and you control a light Tistina monster, you can special summon this card. So special summon itself from the graveyard, special summon itself from the hand. You're going to get to do this every single turn as long as you control a Tistina monster, which is awesome follow-up. It also has the effect that you can target one Tistina monster, himself included, or one face-down card you control, destroy it, then add one Tistina card from your deck to your hand. So again, just adding a Tistina card. So we have 2 cards already, which search anything, and we have Demigod, which searches the spells, which searches anything. So this deck can be really consistent with the searches, because everything just searches everything. And you're going to get to do this every single turn, because you get to summon this back from the graveyard as long as you control a light. So this is a really good card, and definitely a free of. Also, the first wave of support was Hound of the Tistina. This card has the same summoning condition, so if this card in your hand or graveyard and you control a light Tistina, you can special summon this card. This one has the effect that Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face-down defense position monster. This is pivotal because it allows you to OTK your opponent really efficiently by putting their guy to face-down defense position, either with the monster effects or with the continuous spell, and then you just get in for a bunch of damage. I think this is definitely a one-off. I don't think you'd play any more than this. Maybe if you're going more rank 4 centric, you'd want to play more than one. But this card is so accessible because everything is searchable, and because it can summon itself from the graveyard, you can even just send it off Bastina and special summon it back as long as you control light, which is really strong. What else came out in the first wave of support? One of these traps did. So Signs of the Tistina. I don't think these traps are worth playing, honestly, because I think this is definitely a going second deck, as you can see from the latter half of this list. But Science of Tistina was in the first wave support, and this says, activate this card by targeting one face-up monster on the field, special summon this card as an effects monster, Aqua Light level 10 with 0 attack and 0 defense, with the following effect. This card is also still a trap. During your opponent's turn, when that target leaves the field, destroy this card, and during your opponent's turn, when this card leaves the field, destroy that target. This is awful. This is one of the worst trap cards I've ever read in my life. The idea is you target one of your opponent's guys, and then if this leaves the field, then it takes it with it, basically. But just such a weak effect, honestly. It's not worth really playing. The only thing to note is this is an Aqua Light level 10 monster, which means it fulfills the conditions for these guys to summon, or for you to be able to use the book effect of this guy, and those sort of things. But also because it is a Aqua level 10 with 0 attack and 0 defense, you can tribute it to summon an Egyptian God Slime. It's not in my extra deck, because Science is in my extra deck, but it is something you can do. We'll talk about the new support now. So this was the old support. You've never seen this deck at locals, probably, because it wasn't good enough to be played in any semblance of playability. The new support might help that, because the new support is actually quite good. So we're going to start by talking about Fallen of the Tistina. Now this is a level 1 water aqua with 200 attack and 0 defense, and it has the effect that you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and place one of the field spell from your deck face up in your field zone. This is really good. It accesses you the field spell. The field spell's a Foolish Burial, and since we're blinding second, it's probably also summoning a guy from the deck. Since this places in the field zone, this also gets rid of that horrible, issue you would have where you'd activate the field spell and your opponent would just go, I'll negate the activation, and then it doesn't get to summon from the deck because it was never in the field zone to be able to trigger its effect. They would have to negate this, and if they're negating this, then maybe you just have one of these in hand anyway, you just slap it down, and now you play through 2 negates, which is good. I think this is a definite free of just for that reason, but also has a second effect where if a face-up Tistina spell trap you control is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, special summon one light Tistina monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So this guy also just summons Crystal God, which is going to challenge most boards, which is also really good. And yeah, this is definitely a free of. It gets you the field spell. It can get you to the Crystal God if they try and remove your continuous spell, which is going to get you searches every turn, or your field spell, which is going to get you Foolish Burials every turn. They're going to need to answer these cards, and this punishes them for using destruction effects, which are probably the easiest way of doing such a thing. Yeah, this is an 8 out of 10 card. I definitely would play 3 of it. The next card is Revenant of the Tistina. This is a level 2 Fire Aqua. It's a level 2 Aqua, so you can technically make Toad with it. And it has an effect that goes as follows. If this card is in your hand, you can target one Tistina monster you control, except for another copy of itself, special summon this card, and if you do, its level becomes the same as the targeted monster. This is important because it makes it much easier to make the rank 10 monster. We will talk a little bit later on. But it also allows you to make rank 4s, rank 3s, rank 5s, just any of the ranks that we have in the deck, because it just copies the level of the guy it targets, which allows you to play quite a toolbox of Exe Monsters. This extra deck is probably not the best one you could run, but it's what I threw together. It has a second effect. It's not really that relevant. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Aqua Exe Monster you control, attach this card to it as a material. The new card is, of course, an Aqua, so you can attach it to him. You won't be attaching to Toad because we're not playing any frogs to attach to summon anyway. The next card I want to talk about is Tainted of Thea. So this is a level 5 Dark Aqua, 2000 attack, 0 defense, and has the effect that you can tribute summon this card face up by tributing one face down monster your opponent controls. So this is basically like a Stormforth in its own effect, which is quite cool. Kind of acts as a kaiju. You have to normal summon it or tribute summon it, which is interesting, but that's fine because we get an extra normal summoner from breath normally, so that's okay. And there's plenty of ways, as you've seen, to put your opponent's card face down. This card's level becomes 10 if it was normal summoned or set. Obviously, it helps us make the Exe Monster. It also has the effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard except from the field, you can target one Tistina monster you control. This turn, it can make it a second attack during each battle phase, but you can only attack with one monster this turn. The Circular Claws, which is interesting to put on this deck because there's not really a huge monster to attack with, but there is a combo you can do with this card, which we'll talk about when we talk about the Exe Monster. Another new card is Game of the Tistina. This is a quick play monster reborn, basically. Special summon one Tistina monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position, but returns to the hand during the end phase. This is okay. This is probably just like the next best search target after you've got the continuous spell and the field spell, and yeah, it's alright. You could do some funny things like activating this in your opponent's end phase, special summoning back a Demigod. Demigod bounces to hand, and you special summon this and search for another spell or trap. I'm only playing one of this card. You could probably play more because the deck is super searchable, but I think one's fine. And yeah, that's all of the Tistina cards in the main deck. We do have two more traps to talk about. I'll talk about these before we talk about the Exe. So we talked about signs. Embrace of the Tistina is a pretty interesting card. When your opponent activates an effect of a monster on the field, you can target that monster and change it to face down defense position. This is cool. It's like, oh, it's Book of Moon if your opponent activates a monster effects. However, you have to control a Tistina monster with 3000 or more defense to be able to activate this card, and in the main deck that's only Crystal God, and the Exe is also 3000 defense. You either have to control the Exe or you have to control Crystal God to be able to activate this effect, which is kind of mid, to be honest. During the end phase, you can target one face down monster your opponent controls and take control of it. This is like a relatively okay effect. This is a really strong effect, but the fact you have to control a Tistina monster with 3000 or more defense kind of just makes it dead in the water. You could obviously play one because everything is so easily searchable in the deck, but if you're playing a Blind Second deck, I don't see the point of playing this card, and I think Blind Second is definitely the way to go for this deck. The next card is Dissonance of the Tistina. This card has the effect that you can activate one of these effects. If you control a Tistina monster, you can banish one card from your opponent's graveyard face down. This is really strong against Tyr and other decks. This is good against Unchained, I guess. You can hit like a Yama at a graveyard. Yeah, that's alright. If you control a Tistina monster that was special from the extra deck, however, you can banish all cards from your opponent's graveyard face down. So this absolutely cans Tyr. Like, Tyr cannot play into this card. So this is probably something you might side, or you might main if Tyr becomes more popular, because honestly, this deck's probably not going to be able to blind second through Tyr. But if you get to resolve this, you just win the game against Tyr on the spot, I'm pretty sure. Also has the effect that you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a Tistina monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, which is pretty strong. This is a really strong effect, and the second effect is strong, and the first effect is pretty strong as well. You could definitely play this card, but since I'm playing a going second list, I didn't bother playing it. But you could probably make room for it somewhere, because you don't normally OTK, even if you're blinding second. So maybe you just search this as follow-up, but it's not going to be good against every deck. I don't know, to be perfectly honest. This leaves us with one card to talk about, and that is the Exe Monster, and this was also the last card to be leaked. It requires 2 level 10 monsters, so it is generic as a rank 10. It has 2000 attack, 3000 defense, and it is, of course, a light monster, a light aqua. If this card is special summoned, you can send all face-down cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. This is a really strong effect against back row decks, especially. Like, if they have, like, set 5, you summon this, it's like, oh, bye-bye to all your cards. Obviously, the floodgates, they flip them up and they stay, but, like, you're still removing a good chunk of your opponent's removal. And, of course, because you're Book of Eclipsing everything with your other cards, it basically removes everything on the field. It also has the effect that once per turn, if this card has Crystal God Tistina as material, you can detach one material from this card, and this card gains 2000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. Sorry, so he goes up to 4k. This of course means if you make this card with Crystal God and the Tainted of Tistina, you can detach the Tainted of Tistina to activate this effect to go up to 4k, and then Tainted will trigger. Since it wasn't sent from the field, it was sent from Exe material to the graveyard. You can target the Exe and it can attack twice. He's 4k, he can attack twice. Say you have a Hound on board, you can go 4k twice, 8k, and that's an OTK right there. It has another effect that if this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while it has material, you can special summon one Tistina monster from your graveyard. This is relevant because it doesn't say other Tistina monster, like other than itself, so this can special summon itself back, which is quite relevant because obviously when it's special summoned, you can send all face down cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. So if you've got your opponent into a position where you've like booked their boards, but they still out this, and it's like, okay, I'll special summon this back, and I'll just remove everything on the board again. And this comes up with the level 2, who can... Level 2? Yeah, the level 2, who can attach himself to material. So you special summon this back, you go level 2 attach, and you go, okay, I'll detach, and I'll go... Well, you won't, because you won't have the Crystal God as material. So I still don't understand what this card attaches. Maybe they'll release another Tistina Exe. But those are all of the cards that are in the Tistina archetype. We'll quickly talk about the selections for the rest of the deck. I'm playing Kaijus because you can't really play through negates, you want to remove them, and you can still book Kaijus. It's funny that you can like Kaiju them, book it with like a breath, you can just Kaiju them again. That's really funny. I'm playing Eclipse because it sets everything face down, which lets you attack directly. It lets you tribute for Tainted of the Tistina and other stuff along those sort of lines. It's probably a card worth playing. Playing Evenly Matched weird in the blind second deck, which kind of wants to OTK but kind of not. But again, this deck doesn't really break boards all that well, so you kind of have to play these haymakers. Super Poly, the extra deck can be literally anything. You could play Prosp in this if you wanted to, but I'm not. And yeah, that's the main deck. The extra deck's like 2 of these guys. We're playing some Trains, we're playing some rank 4s because we have the level 2 who can drop himself. Super Poly targets Toad Durandal for a rank 5 target. Yeah, for the rest of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a replay. So this is me against Billy earlier today. He was on Dynamorphia because he wanted to make my life difficult and not give me free face-up cards to the field spell. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast forward through this. We'll do next play. We'll do next play. That'll be bad. So Billy starts off by activating Pot of Duality, and I believe he adds a Solemn Judgment off of this card, and he sets 5 back row and passes the turn. We start our turn by activating the... we attempt to go to battle phase. In the main phase, he goes, okay, I'll activate Dynamorphia Domain, and he sends his 2 cards to special summon out his Kentrigina. Is it Kentrigina? Yeah, Kentrigina. And from here, he uses Kentrigina's effect, banishing the domain to fusion summon again to put a Rexstrom on the board. This kind of changes my play because I don't want to evenly match at this point because I know he has a Solemn Judgment. So I activate Interrupted Kaiju Slumber to remove everything from the board. And he activates Solemn Judgment, which is cool. But Interrupted Kaiju Slumber is you can only activate once per turn, so we activate another Kaiju Slumber, remove his Rexstrom, put a Jizakiro on our board, put a Gamma on his, and these cards are forced to attack. He's able to activate Rexstrom here to special summon out the Kentrigina from his graveyard since it was destroyed, and from there we activate the Fallen of the Tistina to grab the field spell. He doesn't have free face-up cards at this point, which is really annoying, but we can still activate the effect to send a copy of Sentinel from deck to graveyard. From here, we normal summon the Resilience, and what happens here is I realise that this is not a light monster, so I cannot special summon my Sentinel, which was the plan I was going for. So we actually end up going to battle phase because we were forced to by our Kaijus, and we attack over the Gamma Seal, and to which Billy activates Ferret Flames, shuffling our Jizakiro away, and we end up passing turn. He draws a turn and gets a copy of Dynamorphia Brute, setting the card and going to battle phase, or going to battle phase and then setting it afterwards. We take a bunch of damage here, and he sets a copy of Brutes. From here, he activates Trap Tricks to set a copy of Frenzy, and passes the turn. We go into our main phase, and I banish my Interrupted Kaiju Slumber to search for a Kaiju. This is to deal with the Rexstrom on our opponent's board. Oh, we didn't even wait for the Rexstrom. We just Jizakiru'd because he controls the Gamma Seal. We go to battle phase. He activates Frenzy to send a Varizia and a whatever that one's called, to summon a copy of Rexstrom, and this has been a mistake because he's now put 3 face-up cards on the field, which allows us to use the field spell to send Hound and special summon out this Crystal God of Tistina. This normally wouldn't be an issue for him, since we can't activate the effects of our guys because they're above his life points, but we special summon out this Hound and we special summon out this Sentinel, and from here we go to battle phase, punch into the Rexstrom with the Crystal God of Tistina. This puts all of our guys to 250 attack, but it does allow us to kill our Crystal God of Tistina, which allows us to trigger the Tistina's effect. We take 2750, we activate the Crystal God's effect, booking everything, and since our opponent controls a face down card, we can get in directly with Hound and Sentinel for the remainder of the damage. Billy should not have lost that one, but he played into the field spell and he got punished. The next game, we are going second once again. He's playing a trap deck, we're going second deck, and we see our that Billy has Phyresia, Sonic, Anti-Spell Fragrance, Intact, and Ferret Flames. Not the best opening, but it's pretty good. He's got Anti-Spell and he's got Phyresia. So Billy's going to start by normal summoning Phyresia, setting domain, setting 5, and passing turn. We go to standby phase into main phase, and then in standby phase he goes Anti-Spell Fragrance. We move to main phase 1, and then we go to battle phase to bluff a copy of Evenly Matched. This forces Billy to use his Frenzy, to use his fusion summoning effect, since Frenzy is only during the main phase. So from here he uses Diplos and sends the other fusion to summon Kentrudina, and then Kentrudina's effect banishing the Frenzy to summon a copy of Rexstrom using the fusion in the extra deck. This puts 3 guys in the graveyard. We might be under anti-spell, but we can still activate the effect of Fall into Tistina to place the field spell face up, which is really strong. We can then activate the effect of the field spell to send a guy and special summon a guy, so we do, and we special summon the Crystal God, and then realise that Crystal God has 2000 attack and our opponent has 2000 life points, so we cannot activate the effect. However, we can use the effect of Sentinel in our graveyard, so we special summon him out, and then we use the Revenant's effect, targeting the Tistina to special summon itself as a level 3. We then use Sentinel's effect, targeting our Revenant to pop to get a search, to which Billy responds with an Intact, negating the activation and destroying it. And from here we go to battle phase, trying to do the same thing we did last time, to crash it, to set the entire board and removing the anti-spell since it's a face-up card. And Billy responds with a Ferret Flames, which shuffles our guy into the board. We have a normal summon, so we set a guy to make sure we don't die, and set our 3 spells, the anti-spell stopping us from playing. Billy top decks a Called by the Grave. Doesn't really have much to do here, so he pretty much just goes to battle phase, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it goes to battle phase, Kentrudina over the Revenant, chaining the effect of Rexstrom in the damage step to half to increase Kentrudina's attack. We take 3000 for this attack. He gets greedy and attacks with the Phyresia into the face down monster, and he's not punished because Hound only has 700 defense, and he gets in directly with the Rexstrom for 3000. He goes to main phase 2, sets his Call by the Grave, and passes turn. From here, we draw, we find an Evenly Matched, not the best card in the world, but our opponent still has 3 face-up cards in the field, so we can activate the field spell here, sending a Sentinel and special summoning out a Crystal God of Tistina. We then activate the effect of Super Poly on Resolution, discarding the Evenly Matched, to fuse together his Kentrudina and his Rexstrom for a Dragosepelia. And from here, we are so far in the driving seat since we no longer have to worry about the Rexstrom. We activate the Crystal God's effect, setting the Phyresia and sending the Anti-Spell Fragrance, and then we activate the effect of Hound. Billy activates the effect of Call by the Grave to banish our Hound. This is actually a misplay by me. I should be flipping up this game with the Tistina to special summon the Hound to avoid the Call by the Grave, to guarantee we can get in directly and kill him, not having to worry about destroying the Phyresia and having it float. But I'm not good at Yu-Gi-Oh! So what I do is I allow it to resolve, and from here we special summon the Sentinel since we control a light, and we use the Sentinel's effect to pop this Interrupted Kaiju Slumber we have set to search for a copy of Demigod of the Tistina. From here we activate Demigod's effect, special summoning itself and grabbing a spell. We grab the Continuous spell from our deck, and we then overlay our guys to go for the Exe Monster. We use the Exe Monster to send all of our face-down traps, face-down cards our opponent controls. This includes the Phyresia and the Dynamorphia Sonic, which was not live because he didn't control a Dynamorphia monster. And since this sends, it doesn't trigger our opponent's Phyresia to special summon another copy from the deck of Diplos or whatever it special summons. From here, we can attack with the Sentinel. This triggers the Sonic to banish. We then attack with the Exe. This allows him to banish the intact, and then finally we attack with the Dragosepalia for lethal, 2-0ing Dynamorphia, which isn't exactly the biggest flex in the world, but you saw how Tistina could potentially play against some form of deck. I was going to show you another replay against Phantasm's Spiral, but I think this video's gone on long enough. Yeah, that's Tistina. I'm probably going to pick up this deck because pretty much the entire deck is super rare or below, and it's really cheap, but I have all the staples anyway to play it. Would I recommend you play this deck? Probably not. I mean, it's a lot better than it was last format, which is saying something. Not really saying much, but it is better. So if this deck did interest you when it was first announced, this would probably be a good time to pick the cards up and just have a little play about. Could be good at a local level. You could have fun with it, and maybe you'd play the deck a lot better than I do. But I think this deck is definitely in need of a third wave of support for it to actually be competitively viable. But you don't expect that from a deck full of commons and supers. Yeah, that's the end of the video. If you did enjoy, I really would appreciate it if you left a like, comment, subscribe, all that bollocks, and we'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one.